Well, thank you very much. My name is David Fine. I'm the CEO of ValueSource, and I've been involved in writing report writers and trying to automate the report writing process for many, many years. And Mark, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Mark Roberts. I do technical support here at ValueSource. I collect comps from brokers, do sales, kind of a mixed bag of everything. But most recently, I've been working with our developer for the Zap report builder, beta testing, fixing, the many issues that have come up through beta testing, any bugs, anything like that. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. Me or David should easily be able to answer, whatever comes up that you guys might, be curious about, want to know about, how you might do something, etc.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Well, let's get started here. Zap is an interesting product, and I'll get more into the details. But what is Zap good for? We're talking about automating valuation reports. It's really for evaluators that are producing reports in a similar format. Many you probably are. In other words, if you look at your last 10 reports, there's probably a lot of similarities. You don't start with a blank page. You go file open in Word and find a report that was, the most similar to the one you're working on, and you sort of start with that one. So evaluators that are producing reports in a similar format with data from Excel, and we say, if you've got more than 20 plus numbers, tables, and charts from Excel in your report, then this is a really great way to do that. And also those of you that are doing variable content, and you all are, in other words, the example I use is some reports have a DLOM, some don't. And usually what we hear evaluators are doing is, you'll go to a report that had a DLOM section in it, opening it, copying and pasting it, and putting it in your new report. And that's sort of the way that the process goes. This helps automate that thing. What it's not good for is those of you that are creating a lot of custom one-off reports. In other words, if your reports don't look like each other, even if your Excel files, are different, if you're creating one-off kinds of things, this really is not the best way to automate. We can talk about some tips later. Or if there's little or no Excel data in your report, unless you want to change that, and we'll talk about this for a minute. And it's really funny. I left this slide in here. It says, who is this good for? If you look at that picture, does anybody see what's wrong with that? And what's interesting is when we talk, there's a mistake in there. And I left it in there intentionally because I just wanted to bring up this point. I used AI, I used ChatGPT-4 to create that image, and I typed in the right text, but it messed up the text. It added some extra I's in there. And it's just one thing to think about when you're talking about automation. You need to pay attention, especially with AI. It can mess things up. So what is Zap? And before I get into this, would everybody just make sure your chat window's open? I want to make this a little more interactive than just me talking at you. So can everybody just type your name in the chat and where you're from, so we can see who's from where? And I'll be asking you some more questions throughout this, like I said, to make it more interactive. Hey, Darren from Denver, you're close by. So what is Zap? The goal of Zap is to reduce the time it takes to produce more credible valuation reports. Now, that's an interesting thing to say, more credible valuation reports. How can a tool help you create more credible reports? And where I get that from is not me, but a number of people that have used Zap. Lots of people are coming in. Angela from Texas, Eric from Pennsylvania, Charles from Dallas. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. But why more credible? And what they said is, if they can put more detail in a report, in other words, if there's more Excel data in their narrative, it creates a more credible report. And what's the sort of opposite of that? The opposite of that is there's less data in the report, or very little data in the report. And I've even had some mid-size evaluation firms tell me they put almost no data in the report because it's such a hassle to do it, both from a logistical perspective as well as a quality assurance perspective. They don't do it, and they just refer people to the working papers in the back, the printed Excel papers. So that's something to think about. How much data is in there? I think what happened is a lot of evaluators, just because it's such a pain to get a lot of Excel data into reports, tend to do less. And Zap solves that problem completely. So Zap is designed for evaluators who are creating reports in Word that contain Excel data like numbers, ranges, and charts. And also you want to automate that optional content piece. Now, let me just say this. I think most of you know this. Zap is not, you don't need our valuation software to run Zap. Actually, it's completely disconnected from our valuation software. So what are the challenges getting getting data into a Word report, it's really a slow and painful process. And there's two different pieces. One is getting the data in there the first time. In other words, let's say you've got dozens or hundreds, and many reports we see have hundreds of individual links. The discount was, the value of the company is, the value is this, that, the other thing. Here's here's what the balance sheet looks like. Here's what my, build up rate looks like, all those kind of things. So it's a hassle to get in there. And what people tend to do, most people are copying and pasting. In other words, they'll copy from Excel and paste into Word. Now, Microsoft has some automatic tools to do that. They're old, they're broken, they don't work. A vast, vast majority of evaluators do not use those. So the manual entry is you have to manually copy and paste dozens to hundreds of pieces of data from Excel into Word. And then the other thing that's a killer is, I mean, how many of you have gotten evaluation, 80, 90% done, and then there's some change? You make some update, you change some assumption, the attorney gets you some change, and now every number in that report potentially changes, and you have to check everyone, even if it doesn't change, to make sure it's right. So those are some of the challenges. And the other challenges, like I said, are the variable content, the optional content. You have DLOMs, minority discounts, things that may or may not be in a report. You may do a financial statement benchmark, you may not. So how do you deal with that in the report besides just manually, finding some other report, copying and paste it? And I think the truth is that takes more time than you may think. So I want you to think about that. And the other thing I want to think about today too is, if you decide to use Zap or not, if it's a fit for you, I want you to think about your report writing process and the tech you're using to do that, and how you're automating and standardizing that whole process. Because what we're finding is, the more time you're spending on manual kinds of things in this report generation process, part of that process is getting data from Excel into Word, but you can just think about the entire process itself. The more time you're spending or wasting on manual kinds of things, the harder it is to be effective. So variable content, like I said, is also a challenge. Some reports have a DLOM, some don't. The bottom line is creating valuation reports that include Excel data can be hard. And we've talked to a lot of you out there, and people are doing all sorts of interesting things. Some people do a word mail merge. There's some there's some good things with using a word mail merge. There's some really hard things. We've had people tell me they produce everything in PDF format, and then produce their Excel working papers in PDF, and then go into Acrobat and combine them. And not only is that challenging from a like a logistical perspective, but every time something changes, you have to go through that whole process. So if you're doing those kind of things, Zap will probably put a smile on your face. So the question is, how do you automate this process if you're using your own Excel and Word documents and you want to make this faster? And that's why we created Zap Report Builder. We've had a report builder in our platform for people that are using our evaluation software. And let me ask this: how many of you are using our evaluation software? Just type in the chat, yes, I'm using it, or no, I'm not, just so I get a sense. But those of you that have been using our software are very familiar with our report writer. This is a similar thing, but there's a really cool twist to it. So we think that, okay, most of you are not using the software. Some of you are using the software. Thank you guys for chatting in. They're not using it currently. Yeah, and a lot of people have decided they want to use their own Excel and Word stuff, which is why we did this. So there's four main reasons why you should think about using Zap. And like I said, what I want you to take away here is not just that I want you to buy Zap, although I do want you to buy Zap because I think it's a great tool. But if for some reason Zap doesn't work for you, think about the kind of things we're doing and the way you can automate, and just the process we're using to make this thing not only faster, but we think more credible. So it automates and standardizes the creation of evaluation reports. The coolest thing, it's an Excel and Word add-in. So there's no special software you need. It's not like you're using our platform, and you'll see that it's super simple to use. So the three big things are, it obviously saves time. That's cool. It also makes quality control easier, because when you're done with a report, you don't have to go back and foot and tick every number because they're connected. We think it improves the quality of the report, and we've heard a lot of evaluators tell us that, because it gives them more time to focus on the parts of a report that are more important: the narrative, the writing, the analysis. Also, it helps you improve realization rates. The big deal for you guys is it works with your Excel and Word files. It does not need our software to work. So our first report writer happened in 1998 or 1988, and it was MS-DOS. We had gotten a evaluation program out, and then it was actually Lotus 1A, and people were liking it, but they came back to us and said, "Hey, this analysis is really helping us out, but can you help us with the written report? The written report is taking too much time, and we're doing them again and again and again." So we wrote our first one in MS-DOS, and then in 2005 we had our first version for evaluators that was built in, and then we've had thousands of people using that. And then a few years ago, I thought, wow, what if we created one just in Microsoft Office that wasn't connected to our stuff at all, that people could use for evaluation reports or anything? And I've had that idea for a long time, and finally we spent the time and energy to make that happen. And Mark has been integrally involved in that whole process of, getting the product out there, talking to a lot of you people about beta testing and what kind of things you were doing.
David,
So,
can I
yeah,
interrupt real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it looks like Ian in the question just in the chat said value source report writer has live integration of schedules from the analysis. How is Zap different? And I can answer that one pretty quickly. Zap is not necessarily aimed at the people who use our software currently. It's more for people who use their own Excel, Excel spreadsheets outside of the software. And not necessarily the people who use our software. You can, we've actually made it compatible to where you can use your VS, BVM Pro, your value source profiles within Zap and still use Zap instead of the report writer that's integrated. So they work pretty similarly. Zap does actually have a few more options as far as copying and pasting things, and we'll get into that when we do the demo of the actual product, but it gets into being able to copy and paste the same link over and over again and have it connected in a different way than the regular value source software does. That's just to answer that question just off the top before we get any further. Like I said, it's pretty similar to how the value source software works now. However, it's meant for people who use their own Excel worksheets, but you can still use it with Value Source Pro and BVM Pro for things.
Okay, thanks, Mark. But just to be clear, Value Source Pro has a template that links in the live schedules. This will let you do the exact same thing with your files, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. Someone said most software I've seen will not work with Pro Systems FX engagement environment. Um, we used to have problems with that. Mark, I don't know if we still have problems with that. Talk to tech support later, we can see. But yeah, those things have been a problem. And Mark, will you talk about the versions of Excel and Word this is compatible with?
Yeah, so right now, everything works with Office 2016 and later. Just 2013 and older just is, too old for us to support. So 2016, 2019, is it 21 or 22, which is I think the last perpetual, and then Office 365. So as long as you're on 2016 or later, it'll work with that. We haven't had any issues specific to one version of Office for anything as far as compatibility with the different versions.
Thank you. And then someone said, is it compatible with PowerPoint as well, or just Word? PowerPoint is definitely on our radar. We did some beta testing with some M&A folks, and most of their reports are in PowerPoint and not in Word. So it's definitely on our radar. At the moment, it's not. Okay, that was the last question. Let's keep going here. So how does it work? It brings in cells, ranges, and charts. It's super simple to point and click. We'll show you how that works. The really cool thing is it updates the links automatically. So if something in Excel changes, you can just click a button and it ripples through your report. And this variable content thing I think is really powerful. And I'll show you an example that somebody used for an engagement letter that I thought was really awesome with Zap. Because like I said, once again, when you think of, if you step back and think about the process you're using to create reports, this variable content thing is something that can take a lot of time. Is it a DLOM? Is it an adjustment? Is it a minority interest discount? How'd you do this, that, or the other thing? We can show you how with Zap you can automate the variable content or the things that need to be sometimes in and sometimes out pretty easily. So it's an Excel add-in. There's a ribbon in. We create a ribbon in Word and Excel, and it makes it really easy to use. So since you already know how to use Word and Excel, it makes it pretty simple to say. Here's a question here. So saves times, improves qualities. Like I said, minimal using learning curve. The cool thing is it uses your documents. It uses your Excel files and your Word files for documents. So it gives you more time to actually do writing and analysis. And once again, we think, and we've got a lot of clients tell us, if you're too sparse on the amount of data in your report, the report is less credible and harder to read. So if you're spending less time updating Excel data in your report, and you're spending more time writing and convincing people and creating a persuasive document, that's helpful. So like I said, it works with your own documents. You can open up your own documents in this thing, and we'll show you how that works. So let's take a quick look at how Zap works here. Here's a simple valuation report, and you'll notice there's a Zap Word toolbar menu, and there's a whole ribbon for Zap. And let me just say this too. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a number of commands here. There's two really phases here. One phase is you're creating your template, and we'll tell you, our special offer coming up here. We're willing to Zapize your existing report, for the first, I don't know how many users we have, but clearly everybody on this webinar if they wanted it. So when you're creating a template, you're doing things like you'll see this highlighted. The gray fields are highlighted fields from Excel. So if you click on this, that's actually a field from Excel. So the first phase of what you do is create a template. And mostly after that, what you do is you're just saying, I want to create this report from this template, and I want to hook it to this Excel data file. So if you're using an Excel data file that has the same format, and I assume most of you are using an Excel data file with the same format for most of your valuations. In other words, you either have a standard template you use, or you go back to the last valuation you do, and you go file, save as my new client name, and you start inputting data and things like that. So if that's the case, you connect your template, your Word template, to your Excel file, and then you just create a new report. So there's an Excel file connected to this, and under Manage Workbooks, we can see that. But let's just walk through these menus here. It's pretty straightforward. You can open documents. You can open sample reports. And remember, templates are the things that you're creating reports from. And you can you have to have a template to create a new report from. You can open up any Word document and create links or update links. But the difference between a template is that's what you use to create a new report from. And we'll walk through that. So this just gives you some ways to get to the template folder, open templates. And then the other thing people ask us too is, well, if I have a Word document myself with a report, how do I turn that into a template? Really simple. You open the document, you just save it as a custom template, and just create the links. And the next time you say create a new report, your report is there. And some people have more than one report. In other words, you may have a conclusion. Somebody saying something? Somebody may have a formal report, or a final conclusion, a value report, and then some people may have a smaller, shorter report. And so you can have as many reports as you want. And usually people have one or two, but we've had people that have a lot more than that, and you just create them that way. This is how you create a new report. We'll walk through that in a minute. Now, there's obviously Excel workbooks connected to a template. You can have more than one too. You can have as many as you want. So if you're using multiple files to build reports from, you can connect them all. This update button is the real magic here. This is what updates all the data from Excel. Oh, here's a polling question, so we'll give you guys a minute to answer that.
You don't need to stop for them, Dave.
Okay. So update is the thing that creates the links between Excel and Microsoft Word. Can I close the polling question now?
You can just close your window, just X out.
There we go. Okay. So a little bit off track here. So yeah, that's the update piece. And there's three general sections, or two big sections. One is links, the other one is blocks. Blocks are the optional content, and blocks you create in templates, not documents, and we'll sort of go through that. But with text links, you can go through and you can find the next links. This one has, let's just take a quick look at this. This is a very simple document that just has a few things pulling in from Excel here. It's got a table. It's got, now this is the range. Someone asked about the range. Oops, let me turn off let me highlight one of these here. This is the range down here. So when you're talking about schedules, you can bring in any range from Excel and drop it into your report. And you can size it, and the size will stick. So I know that's a hassle too. Sometimes when you're copying and pasting ranges from Excel, if you have a range that's either too big or too small, or even if it expands on a page, you're constantly having to resize it. This solves that problem because it remembers the size that you pasted in the last time, and it keeps that size. And at the bottom, there's a chart. And then there's a little bit of optional content down here. So there's text links code, there's text links options, there's picture links, and picture links are ranges too. And then you can insert links. So it's relatively simple to go back, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. And it's got some tools to replace links. Like if you've got the name of the company somewhere and you want to replace it with a different cell, and there's 20 references to that, this can do all that automatically. There's some aliases. You want to talk about aliases a little bit, Mark?
Yeah, so aliases are really important. Say you're copying and pasting the company name, 100 times throughout the report, the valuation date, anything that you're doing more than a few times, aliases are really important. So what it allows you to do is you would be able to just click on a link and you would be able to set it as an alias. And then once you have, a few aliases, there's another menu that you'll open up and you can favorite them. So if you see on the right hand side, there's a little star with favorites. You'll be able to just click anywhere in the report, and then you'll be able to paste that link over and over and over again. Another important thing when it comes to the aliases is those are all connected to the same cell. So if that cell gets updated anywhere, if you update that cell on the Excel side, you change the number, you change the name of the company, um, you change anything about that cell on the Excel side and go back, it's actually going to update that everywhere in the report that alias is connected to. So that way you don't have to worry about, oh, is the company name changing in the 20 different places I've, copied and pasted it from the Excel side. So it makes it faster to not have to go back to the Excel portion each time and hit, copy link and paste link. But also when those links are updated, it's updating the link every single time. And that same, anything that's connected to that cell will be updated. So like I said, if you have the company name that changes or, it's misspelled or whatnot, and you have it in 20 places, it'll go through and update it, in the whole report. So you aren't worried, oh, I only updated it. Did it only update in 5 places? Did I have to check 20 different places? You'll know that, hey, this is updated. This is, reflecting what the Excel portion has shown. So it's a little bit different than for those using our, the value source software and report writer. This isn't really an option in there. You can Yeah, it's not really an option to have something where you can just copy the same link over and over and over again. You kind of still have to go back and forth and manually, hit the copy, hit the paste, hit the copy, hit the paste. Whereas with this, you just, favorite it and then you just click wherever you want in the report and the template. And then you just hit, where it says no favorite selected there at the top, it'll have, company name, and you can name them whatever you want too. So it won't necessarily be what's actually in the cell. It'll be it'll give you the option to name it. So you can say, hey, I want this to be the company date, or I want this to be the valuation date, or whatever you want to remember it by. But then you just, like I said, you click up there in that box, and then it'll paste it in wherever you'd like it in the report. And you can do that, over and over and over again. And you can have as many favorites in there as you want. So it makes it kind of intuitive. Is it possible for you to show? Are you asking about a demo for the favorite section?
No, I just wanted you to give a brief overview. That's
Oh,
all.
okay. Well, no, somebody had asked a question about
Oh,
showing a demo. Wasn't sure if that was a demo in regards to the favorites or if it was just overall
yeah,
of
we'll show a demo. We'll get into this now, and Mark, you can walk me through the.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
From
let's take a look at the workbooks. This is a simple workbook attached to this, and you can open it. So let's open it. And so this just has some cells in it. And you'll notice that the cells are the things that we're linking to in the report. So let's just take a look at how this whole thing works. There's a Zap Excel menu, which is a lot less complicated than the other one. There's also a map option on here, which lets you see, you can either see the sheets, the charts, or the range names. Value source, if you're opening up a value source project, you can actually see the entire navigator cell on the left here. That one's got a lot of sheets in it, so it's a little bit hard to navigate. The big name manager is just range names. Zap uses range names if you want to. If you're copying a cell, you'll notice in the upper left here, I named this business underscore name. So if you're going to create a link to the selection, it says, do you want to use the range name or the actual hard coded link? In other words, you want to use, this workbook sells at cell C, what is it, C5? Or do you want to use the name business underscore name? Usually it's better to use the name, because if you ever move it or add a couple of rows to this or add a couple of columns, the name will always be maintained by Excel. So we encourage you to use range names here instead of cell. So I'll just say yes. So that's the name of the company. Let's go back to the report and let's go back to the top of this. And let's just find a place to insert something. Let's go to the bottom, I guess. And then so here I'll say paste link, and you'll see that it showed up. And if we go back to the workbook, and change this to new company, new co, and then go back here and hit update links, it
It
goes through,
updated.
you notice,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Mark?
No, I was just going to say, an updating in Zap is extremely fast. It's been optimized to run through. I've worked on reports that are 100 pages long with a couple hundred links in them, and it takes at most 30 seconds to update the whole report. So it's been, like I said, extremely optimized to update pictures, update links, update anything like that. As you can see, how fast that was. That was 1 second, and this report's 2 or 3 pages long. So it's an extremely fast process of updating all the links and whatnot.
Yeah. And one thing to remember too is, this had the optional section in it called DLOM. The optional content happens the first time you do the update. In other words, the report, when it first gets created, it looks at the optional content and puts in the appropriate optional content, but it only does it the first time. After that, it's updating all the links, tables, and charts, but not the optional content. So if we go back to the Excel file, you can see that down at the bottom here, there's a number of optional sections, and optional sections are just really simple. They're either true or false. So, is there a DLOM section in the report, true or false? Is there a capitalization of earnings, true or false? Did I do a DCF, true or false? Did I do the market method, true or false? So with this idea, you can actually build like a table of contents. I'm sure, some of you have, a standard format, some standards based format that goes through dozens of sections of report, and my guess is you don't have them all in every report. It's really easy here to make a table of contents. You could have a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen sections in here, and you just say which ones do I want, and then you can have them automatically turn on and off. Mark, will you talk about how that works in our current report with methods, because people could do the same thing in their reports with methods?
Yeah, so if anybody's familiar with Value Source Pro, BVM Pro, in the conclusion of the value sections, you'll see the 1s, 2, and 3 column, where it says, hey, this is considered in use, this is considered and rejected, or not considered and not rejected based on the number you put. And that's the same concept here, of, true or false. They're saying, hey, I want to use these sections for different things. If you put, a 1 and you go and, generate the report, it'll add that section into the report from the template. And, if you put a 2 or 3, it won't generate that. So it's the same concept. So it really breaks down to, if I find it that the people I've talked to with beta testing, if they've had multiple reports, they actually combine it all into one, and then go ahead and add this optional content, because then all you have to do is hit, true, false, whatever, XO, whatever you want to set it up as the toggle for that. And then in the report, it'll generate those sections, and you can have it be sections of text. You can have it be different charts, different links that are, attached to those sections to show up. It can get really in depth, and if people want an in-depth look at that, that's not something we'll probably show today. But if you wanted that, that's something I could get on Zoom at a later time and show you, because you can do some pretty interesting things. And when David goes through an engagement letter here, you'll see that more in depth, almost, of what you can really start to do with optional content, because you can do things just from, doing different sections to different formatting of things. You can have it be different, UI and or, statements and things like that. But like I said, when we get into the engagement letter portion that another client of ours has provided for us to show you guys, you'll kind of start to see the full capability of what you can, if you want to spend the time and really figure out the optional content piece, you can really get some in-depth and really detailed reports that might be broken up into different sections of reports that you can just all run off of one report. So it makes it so, one, you just have one report template that you can use, but also you're not trying to copy and paste sections, and you don't have to worry about, oh, did I copy, the full paragraph? Do I have to, cut out different sections? You can have all that be toggleable for different sections, like I said, different pictures, etc. So it can be a really, really helpful tool for people who want to take advantage of that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And one of the things that happens too, I've noticed, is, if the report is complicated to pull together, in other words, if you're going to different sections, if you're looking for a DLOM discussion in the last report you did, and you're opening up your file folder and going through dozens or hundreds of files, it tends to be something that you need to do. One of the things I've heard again and again and again is, once this is automated, a lot of times an assistant or someone else in the office, and not the primary evaluator, can get more involved. Like with my National will show you his engagement letter. And it's funny, his engagement letter is pretty sophisticated. I was pretty impressed to see what he did. But one of the things, I was talking to him about it the other day, and I said, "Can I share it with you guys?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, I don't, let me get back up to speed because I'm not doing this anymore. I gave this to my assistant because now that it's automated, I don't have to do it. And I've heard that about reports too. So it's another thing to think about. If there's somebody else in the office that can do certain pieces of this because it's not so complicated or doesn't require so much expertise. It's another reason to think about automating, whether using Zap or something else. It can really sort of help. So this little back to the spreadsheet, there's a range in here. So someone asked once again about the schedules. You can highlight any schedule that you want. So you can highlight a schedule here. I'll just highlight the top of it and say, once again, copy link. And if we go back to our report here, and hit paste link, it does the same thing, but this time it puts in a range. But once again, if you do things like size it, and you have the option of making this range black or white or color, but if you size it a certain way, it remembers when it pastes it back in here, it remembers what size it was. And I've heard from people too, that's a real pain with Excel. If you're constantly copying and pasting things like ranges and you're sizing them or doing other things to them, you have to go through that process again and again, every time you do this. So this makes it easy. And let's go just take a quick look at a chart and see how that works. Here's a chart. So if you click on the chart and you say copy link and go back to the document and say paste link, you'll see the chart there. And the chart works the same way. If you size it or do other things to it, any of the formatting things you can do to the chart will stick. So hopefully, that makes sense. So that's sort of the basic flow of getting data. So if you had a new report, let's say you've got your report up and there's obviously no links to Zap because you don't have Zap yet. How do you do this? You would, the way you would do this is you'd say, the value of the company, type here, XXXXX. What you do is you'd go through your report and you'd find every section where there's a number or a table or a chart that you want in there. And for the value of the company, you just go to Excel and you'd say, let's see, is there a value here somewhere? Report date, conclusion of value. So here's conclusion of value. We'd say copy link. We'd come over here, we get rid of this, and we just paste the link. And you'd go through your report like that, section by section by section. And like I said, we have an offer. Someone asked this question. We are willing to link up your first report. Now, obviously, there's some caveats. If you send us a gigantic report with thousands of links, we may not be able to do it. But we haven't had anybody send us a report that we couldn't convert for them. So we will go through this process and send you back a zapped report. And then the only thing you have to do is run it and do whatever modifications you have. So this was a report that already exists. Let's take a look at how do we create a new report. So here is let me get to our template folder here. So that was the demo report. So this is how you create a new template, and it's pretty straightforward. What you're doing is you've got a number of templates in your template folder, and you can pick whatever folder you want, and you select the report that you want to run, and then you say, okay, now what Excel file do I want to use? So for example, if you have valuation engagement ABC company, and the Excel file is called ABC, and then you create a new a new engagement for company number 2, and it's got a different name. You just come here and you say, I want to replace this file, and you go out and see what is the new file you want to run this against. And when you say done, what it does is it opens the Excel file, it analyzes everything in this thing, and you'll notice this says NewCo in it, and it's got all the pieces in here, the balance sheet, income statement, and it went through the optional content down here, and it's all, it's all here. So that's how that works. So the steps are you would create a template, one or more, and then when you want to create a new report, you just say create a new report, and it asks you what template you want to use, what Excel file you want to connect to it. It does all the work to do that. And then if the data ever changes once that report is done, you just click the update button, and that makes every cell, table, and chart in there update. So let's take a look at the template that created this report. So let's open a document. Let's open a document, and this is the template. So this is the template for the report that we just did. Now it looks very similar. It actually almost looks identical. The difference between a template and a report is this one has the toggle blocks in it. In other words, this one has the optional content. These are the sections that can go on and off. And these are really simple to set up too. So this is a new piece of optional content. And let me ask you this: type in the chat. Do you think optional content is something you can use? Are you guys going out to old files and copying and pasting a lot? And just type in the chat. Yes, I use variable content now, or no, I don't. Myself. Yeah, Hannah says yes. Justin says yes. Eric says
Okay,
sometimes.
lots of people. Wow.
Yeah, lots of yeses. So pay attention to this. Like Mark said, this one is a little subtle. I'll show you how this works. So the way this works, it's really simple. There is Excel file things down here. And if you don't want to type in true or false, you can make ones or zeros here too. Why didn't that show up? You could put ones or zeros here and put a formula in there that turns these to true or false. The program needs true or falses. So let's go and we're going to say create link to section, and we're going to capture a cell that's true or false. And like I said, you can put ones or zeros and make a formula that turns it to true or false. And then what you can do is you can highlight this block, and then under the zap function, you can say under blocks. Why didn't it show up? How come that didn't show up, Mark? What happened?
Well, I apologize.
Yeah, it worked. It's working. It was
okay.
Oops. So you can there's a number of ways that you can create optional content. You can highlight it. What happened here?
Are you in a template editing? Are you in templates? Or are you in?
Yeah, I'm in templates. There we go. So let's just say create a link. Where is it? Let's go to blocks. Huh.
Did you open that through documents, open custom template, or do you just open a report?
I just opened a document. Oh, maybe I need to open a template.
You have to, even if it's a report, you still have to open it and hit open.
Oh,
open.
Let me do it. Okay.
So that's just that's just
yeah. Okay, so I have to open documents, so open template. You can tell Mark more about this than I do.
So once you open a custom template, then it'll let you do it. But if you just open a, so that's for anybody who uses this going forward. Just as a heads up, if you just open a report, even if you're in template editing mode, you still have to open it as a custom template. The optional content can only be built into a template. So if you just open a random report and go into the block section and try and start doing obviously what David was trying to do, it's not going to give you the options to create a new block. Whereas if you open a template, you'll be able to go ahead and add those blocks, and you can see the add copy link to name and the add block and all that is now.
So I'll try this again. So create link to section, come down to the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to add a block. Thanks, Mark. I didn't realize you couldn't.
No worries.
The document. So so down here, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this block in Word, and then you can add blocks. And there's three ways you can do it. You can do it from the heading level. In other words, if you're familiar with styles in Word, you can add a block to the entire heading level that you're selected in. You can create one from the paragraphs, or you can do it from the selection. So I'm going to do it from the selection. And you'll notice that it put toggle blocks around this piece of text. Now, this piece of text could be, one sentence, two sentences, a paragraph, a whole section. So I think you see the idea of how this works. It's an incredibly powerful idea. So the Excel file has the toggles to turn sections on and off. And then in the report, once you run the report, so now if we took this report and said, let's create a new report around it, it would look at this toggle block, go back to the Excel file and say, if that was true, it would include this text. If it was false, it would not include that text. So this makes it incredibly useful. And I think, in automating and trying to figure this out, there's obviously a delicate balance between automating sections that make sense and not trying to over automate, because once again, it's a delicate balance. How much work are you doing on the front end? How complicated is it? But I'm sure most of you probably have a half a dozen to a dozen pieces of text or sections in your report that you'd want to turn on and off potentially. And this helps you sort of do that. So these are smaller. So that was a template. And let me say this too. I should have realized this. Under documents, there's a little clue here. Is there a template active or is there a report active? And the toggle block stuff you can only do when this says template active. So you have to make sure this is on before you can go to blocks here and see this template kind of stuff. And you can always, there's some go-to things too. Like you can go to the toggle. So this actually brings you to the toggles in Excel. And that's true for anything in this document. If you go to, let's go find a cell here. If you go to a cell and you say, I want to go to where the cell is in Excel, toggle block, let's go to links, go to source. So you can go to any link in the document and say, show me where this is pointing to in Excel. It'll take you to that Excel piece. So it makes it easy to bounce back and forth. Because if you have a document with dozens or hundreds of links in it, it does get a bit complicated. So let's take a look at a bigger report here. Let's open
Just to, yeah, and just to like finish off the whole, the blocks and, having optional content. Like I said, you can put that around individual links. You can put that around, ranges. You can put that around pictures. So it's not just limited to, to like say a paragraph section or whatnot. If you have specific pictures that say you had a market approach section where you use biz comps and value source market comps, and say you wanted to show a graph from one, a graph from another, things like, you can get as detailed into it as you want. It's not just for text. You can toggle pretty much about anything that you're putting in your report. So if you want to get down to, the nitty, like I said, you can do pictures, charts, anything else like that. So it's pretty open to what, how far you want to take it. If you want to do something pretty simple, like what Dave was showing, or like I said, you can get pretty advanced, and him showing you this engagement letter, I think is really going to, show you some of those possibilities that you can do.
Thanks, Mark. The other thing about the optional content is they can be nested. In other words, let's say you have a section for DCF, and in the DCF, sometimes you want to show one chart or another chart. You can have one high-level optional content toggle block that says, is the whole DCF section on or off, yes or no? And then within that block, you can also have as many layers of nested ones. So it can get pretty sophisticated. So you can automate this quite a bit. So here's a bigger report, and I'll just sort of scroll through it. We took a piece of our report, and this has got, dozens of links in here. So, here's the table of contents. It's only 10 pages. This came out of a document that was over 100 pages. But you can see all of the shaded sections are pieces of data from Excel. And in our reports, we have things called helper text, where there are pieces of text in the report that help the evaluator understand what things should they think about, what kind of things, what kind of assumptions should they make, what kind of caveats are there. And we encourage you to do those in your reports too, especially if there's more than one person in the firm, and especially if you're training new people, you can put like breadcrumbs of thoughts into that thing. We've had people tell us, wow, it's really a lifesaver to walk through the report and have, some narrative about this section, what I should think about, and, what kind of things are, possibly problematic. So here's a range of a balance sheet, RMA peer comparison, and you'll notice some things came in. And you'll notice this too. You'll notice this is I, that's a link. Why is the word I a link? Because sometimes you may want to have different words. I don't know how many of you do that, but you may want to say I or we, and sometimes that changes. So in this report, you can pick what word you want to use. It could be, we reviewed, the firm reviewed, the evaluator reviewed, whatever. And then, here's the SIC code. Once again, here's the I. Here's the range from the RMA comparison that's coming in, across a couple of pages. Profit and loss. Here's a chart that came in. Another chart that came in. So once again, I think you get the idea. This report is 10 pages. It's got dozens of pieces of text in here, everything from the data valuation to the value. What is the value? What kind of valuation they do? Here's a fair market value. That may change. In your reports, you may sometimes do fair market value. Sometimes you may do another thing. Sometimes you may do whatever. You may have multiple kinds of reports you're doing with different things that need to show up in the report. So I think you get the idea. This is 10 pages. Our valuation report for the software can be over 100 pages, and there's hundreds of links in there. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of piece and optional content, and there's tons of ranges. We bring the working papers right into the report, and we've always done that because we think it's more readable. If someone's reading through this report and they can see all this detail, it's easier to understand. But once again, if you don't have an automatic way to do it, it's a total pain. So let's take a look at, let me see, is that the end of that? See if there's anything else I want to show you before I show you the, let's see, is there anything else here? So let's take a look at that engagement letter. Let's look at the engagement letter. So this was, let me show you who this is. You guys probably know who this is. Do you guys know Ninesh? He's a great guy. He's super smart. He's very bright. And he's also very technical, and he loves this kind of stuff. So what his story is, he got an engagement letter from somebody else, and he does, I don't know, over 50 engagements a year, probably 50 to 100 engagements a year. And he does these really sophisticated engagements letters. And like I said, he got one from somebody else. And here's the engagement letter. Let me just walk through this. Let me just highlight something else so it'll scroll. And there's all sorts of, let's see. There's all sorts of toggle blocks in here. Now, this isn't the report. This is the template itself. So, let me show you the Excel file, because the Excel file gives you an idea of how cool this thing is. When I saw this, I saw it originally, probably a year ago, and he walked me through this the other day. So this is an engagement letter that has a lot of sophisticated stuff in it. And the story was he got it from somebody else, and it was a manual process, obviously. It was a Word document that had dozens of paragraphs that could be on or off, actually almost 50 paragraphs that could be on or off. And there were lots of subtleties in there. In other words, there's things like the client info, the referring party, the name of the business. And then here's some things about his fees. Is it a retainer? How long will the project take? Is the free up front or partial? Like, these are all these details, right? And he wants to make the engagement letter. In the beginning, he's like, okay, I'll just go through this document manually, paragraph by paragraph, and everywhere there's something to put in, I will type it in. Well, the problem was it took hours. But it not only took hours, but when he would have an assistant help him with it, it would be a couple of day turnaround. In other words, he's bouncing back and forth with questions. He's doing some of it. He's giving some of it to his assistant, and they're doing all this kind of stuff. So here's the stuff they put in. Yellow is the stuff they put in. And you can see he's obviously pretty technically sophisticated to sort of figure this out. He took the raw Word document and automated this whole thing. These are sections that have drop downs. So he's smart enough to know how to do drop downs. And what I tell everybody, let me ask you this, type in the chat. Do you guys know how to use even the most basic, Word or Excel form things like drop downs and macros? Yes or no? If you don't, I would highly encourage you to learn. You can really do an incredible amount of things. So all of this stuff then goes into the report. And then he wanted to have a range. So he's got all of this stuff here, but he wanted it formatted nicely. So he made a tab that's formatted nicely so he can drop a range in. And then here's the list of drop-down lists. If you know how Excel works, these drop-down lists are very simple to set up. And then these are the optional blocks. So look, there's almost 50 of these optional blocks. So he comes in here and says, are these true or false? In other words, are you engaged by the client? Are you engaged by the attorney? Are you engaged by a third party? What standard of value are you using? Fair market value international glossary, fair value client provided, exit planning. Is this a calculation engagement? Is it a valuation engagement? So I think you can see here, there's a lot of sophistication in his engagement letter, which I think is a cool thing because it really allows him to communicate with real precision about the engagement and get this thing, sort of in there. This is one of the cooler things about it. The last thing we looked at was the I or we. Every place in the report where, he had language that needs to change based on whether it was, he was doing the engagement, the company was doing, or what was this? It was who was doing the engagement. It was either the company hired him, the attorney hired him, or both hired him or something. And anyway, so he built a table that has all the language in there. So, you might think this stuff is subtle, but it is it is hard to go through a report and change this kind of language, catch every one of it in a, I don't know, this is a 10-page engagement letter. So every time he has a new piece of language he needs, he just adds a row here, uses the same logic. This cell looks at, what did they pick on this engagement letter thing, and then creates the right text. Now, he obviously went to, great lengths to figure this out, but now this project went from hours to minutes. And the other thing that's cool is he can have his assistant do this entire thing. He doesn't have to worry about it anymore. And I could tell he hasn't looked at this engagement letter process for probably 6 months because he's so comfortable with it and it works so well and it's so accurate. The assistant can just generate it and he's comfortable that he gets what he needs out of it. He doesn't have to go through that process. So here's some text options too. In other words, it's doing some concatenation of texting, very sophisticated kind of stuff. But actually not that hard. You're looking at this inputs and saying, based on these inputs, what do I want to do? So let's go back to this report and let's just generate one of these. Let's do a new report, engagement letter. So let's do the engagement letter, and then we'll pick the one that he used. We'll use that block. So it goes through and it's done. Let's see. There was 22 links, toggle blocks applied. There were 22. So these are the ones that applied. In other words, it looked at 46 and it said 26 of them were on. So if we now come through this engagement letter, what's happening here? You can see that, it includes the paragraphs it should include. Here's that block of range that it said, it needed to come in. So anyway, I think this is a really cool example of taking Zap to, sort of a far place of automation where you've got an engagement letter that's very sophisticated. And he wanted to get to the place where, the automation actually did almost 100% of the engagement letter without any review. Now, that's not necessarily the goal with everything. Clearly, with evaluation report, that can't be, but you can clearly automate to a high level. And I know, we have so many clients using this, and the way they were doing it before was challenging. And with this, it just, it puts a smile on their face that, when the report is ready to be created, they say, create a new report, and click, they create the report. So that's Ninesh's cool engagement letter. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. For those of you that be interested in buying it, it's $495 annually. Is it worth it? You need to look and decide yourself, does it make more sense? Some of the questions we get, is this easy to use? I mean, I think don't get overwhelmed with some of the complexity we're talking about today. Like I said, we'll convert your first report for you. And remember, a vast majority of the time, once you create your template, you're not doing all this copying and pasting and using Zap to, create links. The only thing you're doing is saying, I just want to create a report and tell me what, template I want to use, what Excel file, and that's it. So a vast majority of what you're doing is not the stuff we were doing today, and we will help you through that. Like I said, we will do the first one for you for free, and we'll do the whole thing for you. And if you have questions, Mark has been incredibly useful to our clients where, they'll have some question about how do they do something. Ninesh was calling Mark all the time to figure out Zap well enough to do what he did. So it's easy to use. It is an Excel add-in. How does it compare to alternatives? What we find most people are doing is copy paste kinds of stuff. Compared to that, it's like a breath of fresh air. Microsoft Olay has some linking in it. It's old, it doesn't work. I don't know anybody using that. There are a couple other tools out there that do some linking of Excel data to Word. We find that, those are general tools. We took the perspective of evaluator doing full-blown reports, not just, linking some from Excel data. So we think that this one is more focused and better for evaluators doing reports. So, the goal is before Zap, you're copying and pasting, you're getting data into Word, you're searching through older reports for those sections and those assumptions, and it's a bit painful. After Zap, you've automated some percentage of it. We're not saying you can automate 100% of it, but you certainly can automate a lot of it. For a lot of people, it says it saves them hours. And for some people, it's more than the time savings. It's like the stress level. They're like, when they do a report, especially when you're a deadline, you're on litigation, you got a big report, data has to be turned into an attorney, and someone in the office has to make sure all that data is right. part of it, I've heard this many times, you know, it's just like a relief that they know that the data is right, and they don't obviously you have to cruise through it and look, but you don't have to tie and tick every number. And you know, we know some firms that their QA process is they have a third person tie and tick every single number, every single chart, every single calculation and evaluation report, so, which is incredibly time consuming and expensive. This helps alleviate that process. We've got a lot of people using it. They love it. Whether it works for you, you need to sort of decide if it will or not.